Hello and welcome to Pemberley and Beyond, the podcast where we dive into the tropes of the ever-expanding world of Jane Austen fanfiction, also affectionately known as JAFF. Why the tropes? Well, they're what keep me coming back for more. In a universe where Mr. Collins can be a vile brute of a husband, or Charlotte Lucas a lesbian, the tropes are like familiar landmarks in an uncharted world. Recognisable shapes that help us navigate even the boldest reimaginings and keep them grounded in something familiar. It's that tension between familiarity and the thrill of unexpected terrain that makes JAFF endlessly addictive and full of discovery. Hi, I'm Kat, an Austen enthusiast, long-time JAFF reader, and possibly the ersatz English version of Austenland's Jane Hayes. I want to kick off our inaugural episode over a cup of Assam tea and with a novel that's fresh off the press. Well, fresh by my standards. Published just 4 months ago, Miss Caroline Bingley, Private Detective by Kelly Gardiner and Sharmini Kumar introduces a new and, at first glance, vastly improved version of Miss Caroline Bingley to the streets of an icy Regency London. Yes, you heard that right. Caroline Bingley, not the arch disdainful figure we're accustomed to observing from a safe distance across the ballroom. Here she's reimagined as a quick-witted and surprisingly warm woman, with the unexpected promise of even more character development to follow. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So, the following is from the blurb. 2 years after the events of Pride and Prejudice, Miss Caroline Bingley is staying at her brother's country estate close to Pemberley, wondering if there's more to life than cribbage and playing calls. Wondering if there's more to life than cribbage and paying calls. So, when Georgiana Darcy's maid, Jane, vanishes, and Georgiana disappears in search of her, Caroline races after them to London, only to discover a shocking, cold-blooded murder. Soon Caroline is careering through the grim underbelly of the city, demanding answers of malevolent footmen, reluctant magistrates, Indian dockhands, and mysterious East India Company men. As Caroline exercises her superior powers of investigation, she finds out exactly what an accomplished, independent woman with a sharp mind and a large fortune can achieve, even when pitted against secrets, scandal, and a murderer with no mercy. How exciting does that sound? So, now you're au fait with the plot, let's turn to the tropes. Our first trope falls neatly into what I like to call the discreetly superior servant category. In Miss Caroline Bingley, Private Detective, our heroine... doesn't it feel wrong to be calling Caroline a heroine? Anyway, our heroine undertakes her initial investigation into the disappearance of Georgiana's maid, Jane, with a growing sense of purpose and, crucially, levels up her skills as she goes along, only to realise that perhaps the members of her own household, who frequently came with her to visit Georgiana at Pemberley, knew Jane already and could have helped to find her. But does Miss Bingley come to this conclusion by herself? No, her butler, Gordon, gently mentions it, something that greatly cheeses Caroline off. "Why didn't you mention this before?" she asks him angrily. "Well, ma'am, you never asked," is his succinct reply. And let's be real, can you imagine Caroline Bingley ever asking her servants for their opinion or knowledge? Nah, me neither. This pattern creeps in time and again throughout the novel, and by the time Caroline believes she has solved the darker mystery, we once again realise that what would have been regarded as unimaginable by someone of her sheltered upbringing is nothing shocking to those whose livelihoods depend on people who are used to having almost unlimited power over those they don't consider to be anywhere near their equal. This trope I thought was particularly well executed in this novel, as there were numerous gentle and sometimes less gentle reminders that even a sharp mind doesn't always see the full picture first. That honour frequently belongs to Gordon the butler. In a tradition that echoes the likes of Jeeves and Worcester, Gordon operates just below the surface. He leans into the trope of butler as secret ace throughout the novel, He's measured, unflappable, tough as nails, and quietly but thoroughly brilliant. There's no pomp to him, but as the reader you quickly come to understand that he's come to several conclusions a few chapters before our eponymous heroine. Unlike Jeeves, who paved the way before him, Gordon has no cruelty or smug superciliousness about him. He's just quietly self-assured. That's what makes the trope of the discreetly superior servant so satisfying in this novel. It's because of the balance it strikes. Caroline isn't diminished by Gordon's intellect. She slowly learns to challenge the assumptions she had that lower class automatically equates to lower intellect. Meanwhile, readers who've been assembling the puzzle pieces of the mystery at home have the gratifying sense that we'd noticed what she upstairs has missed. It's smart, it's playful, and it's handled with precisely the sort of narrative restraint that makes this trope shine. The recognition that intelligence isn't always where convention says it should be. Which leads on nicely to the next trope. So this second trope I'm going to call Regency England is so white. Pretty self-explanatory one, I think. It's quietly astonishing how often fanfic and even traditional publishing renders Regency England as a sort of genteel snow globe. All white muslin, white skin, and white marble houses, as though everyone who is in this world is channeling their inner Rodin, beating their chest and possibly declaring, "I feel it in my soul, they were never coloured," presumably while sculpting a marble bust of Darcy and ignoring the entire East India Company ledger. But this didn't happen here. There's a moment when Sadiq, no spoilers about who he is, but there's a moment when Sadiq looks at Caroline and says, "I think you've never known any Indians before. No Lascars, no Ayers. There are so many of us here, and you have not realized?" And that opens the door to a much wider, and I feel rather radical, conversation in such a cozy mystery. So what I found Gardiner and Kumar did so deftly in this novel was remind us that the presence of Indian characters in Regency England is not a creative indulgence, it's not a postmodern flourish, it's not a charming anachronism a la Bridgerton, it is quite simply historical fact. The authors drew on historical sources to explore not only the profound impact of colonization on the subcontinent, but also the ways in which the empire shaped life back in Britain. So we're talking a little sprinkling of trade, of war, of cultural exchange, and of the Indian diaspora as Indians came over as workers, as scholars, as servants to London long before the Victorian era. And something that I feel that a lot of Regency novels, a lot of JAFF forgets, is that the existence of people from the rest of the British Empire's presence in England is rather well documented. Now, as you know, our beloved Austen's own work leaves these lives largely unmentioned. Most of the reason for that is that out in the countryside, she did not come into as much contact, if any, with Indians or with Anglo-Indians. However, some of her contemporaries, including Susan Ferrier, in Marriage, hint at a wider, more complex social world beyond the confines of Bath, of Meryton, and Miss Caroline Bingley, private detective, picks up this thread and weaves it confidently into the foreground. In doing so, the novel doesn't just reimagine who gets to tell the story, it asks us to reconsider whose stories were always there waiting to be heard. There are several instances in the novel where a little bit of that white saviour trope creeps in. It's not done worthily, and I don't know the degree to which we have Sharmini Kumar to thank for that. It's done in such a way that Caroline's assumptions are challenged. Gently, comparatively. And you come to realise that, yeah, you can actually have a lot of social commentary in JAFF novels. You can have that social commentary and it can be balanced. It doesn't feel worthy. It doesn't feel forced. It's just the plot. And that was an absolute joy. Regency London wasn't just a backdrop for Empire Line gowns and knowing glances across drawing rooms. London has never been just one thing. It's always been layered, complicated, contradictory. The Romans believed that London was hell, or hell on earth, simply because of the number of rivers that flowed through it, which were the same as the number of rivers that flowed through the underworld. Something that I feel quite a few Londoners and Northerners in particular would agree with. And lest anyone comes on here to tell me that this is some radical modern intrusion, it really isn't. The history's always been there, we just have to stop editing it out. I noticed that Shashi Tharoor got a name drop in the thanks section for research, which I think has influenced quite a bit of the novel. And as a quick literary nod, Marriage by Austen's contemporary Susan Ferrier mentions an Anglo-Indian heiress, even in 1818. So even at that time, people were writing stories that touched upon the broader world. And now on to the slightly frothier trope. Georgiana Darcy. She herself is not a trope, more, I'd call her a recurring quirk in JAFF. And in this novel, I think we're going to refer to her as Georgiana, the Regency whirligig. She's been rendered with all of the substance of a lemon souffle left in the sun. Throughout the novel, she's so easily swayed that she makes a windsock look decisive. And I get that she's only 18 and clearly meant as a foil to Caroline's sharper edges and decisiveness. But really, I found her to grate. She grated very greatly, like some sort of cheese grater. I did find myself I did find myself skim reading a lot of the Georgiana dialogue sections because, frankly, I wanted to take her by the shoulders and I wanted to shake her and I wanted to say, please just pull yourself together, girl. Look, I love that Georgiana was kind. You know, had she not cared so much about Jayana, then none of this story would have happened. And maybe as the series wears on, considering the deft hand that this pair of authors has played with subverting a fair number of tropes I'd gone in expecting, I have a feeling they've probably got a few tricks up their sleeve when it comes to her character development in future novels, but it definitely needed to be mentioned. So, yeah. And with that, let's step beyond Pemberley and into this month's companion read. To my mind, this is like a wine and cheese pairing, only for tropes. Every episode, I will take one prominent trope from the main fan fiction book and recommend a second novel, one not set in the Austenverse, which contains the same trope but done differently. I see it as a form of literary magic to encourage myself and others to read outside the Jaffaverse. And as there's an element of trope sorcery in pairing these papery delectations, I've decided to call them my Hocus Tropus recommendations. Yes, I am aware that's terrible. No, I'm not sorry. And yes, I probably will keep using it. So, my Hocus Tropus recommendation for the first episode of Pemberley and Beyond is The Broken Vessel by Kate Ross. And this Hocus Tropus draws on the trope of representation in Regency England. So what really drew me into Miss Caroline Bingley, Private Detective, was the rich historical detail, you know, the language, the pacing, the magic of the Thames freezing over. And I feel that Broken Vessel, which is the second in the Julian Kestrel Mysteries by Kate Ross, really does follow in the footsteps, or rather leads the way, as this was written back in the 90s by a tragically largely forgotten author. It examines London's seedy underbelly. The period detail is wonderful. The characters are white, all of them, but there's a wide range of classes represented, honestly. The language, even the phrases, the slang, drew from actual contemporary language and contemporary slang. And the first time that I read this, I had to double check to see that Kate Ross wasn't actually a time traveller. Shockingly, she was from the US, which absolutely blew my mind. She captures the cadence of English conversation, the I would say subtlety, but I feel we're blowing our own trumpets a little too much. But she captures the phrasing, the turns of phrase, and the humour of English. I found the entire Julian Kestrel series to be intelligent, stylish, and full of texture. It's the equivalent of Peter Wimsey or Sherlock Holmes flirting with Northanger Abbey, and all set in a combination of London's underworld and in the drawing rooms, but the drawing rooms as accessed by Julian Kestrel, so a man. And now, with my Hocus Tropus recommendation charmingly bespelled to you, I'm going to hop down from my digital soapbox and make my way backstage, as it were, to Cat's Corner, the part of the show where I pour us all another cup of tea and spend a minute or two talking about whatever's on my mind. Before we wrap up, I just want to take a quick moment in Cat's Corner to say that I'm well aware there's an imperial ton of brilliant JAFF out there, and just as much insightful, academic, witty, and beautifully produced content about Jane Austen and Jane Austen fanfiction. You know, podcasts, vlogs, articles, TV series, you name it, it exists. As you will probably tell, or as you can probably tell, this little podcast won't be the most scholarly, it won't be the most polished, it won't even be the most consistent, but I do hope that it was all right, and more than that, I hope it gave you something to smile at, think about, or maybe even add to your reading list. If you got this far, then please leave a comment, just so I know I'm not speaking into the void, or rather, speaking into this microphone. Thanks for coming on this first little wander with me. It's been a joy. You've been listening to Pemberley and Beyond. If you enjoyed today's episode, feel free to tell a friend, share it with your book club, or whisper about it mysteriously behind a fan at your next ball. Until next time, may your tea stay hot, your tropes well executed, and your Mr Darcy tolerable, I suppose.